Hey, if you ever need an explanation as to how the scaling works in Superliminal, you know, like when you hold an object and it looks normal size when you're holding it, but then you release it and then either it's much bigger or much smaller? Well, I decided to reach out to the developers of Superliminal, and this is the answer that I got. On top of the audio commentary, it was stated here that in order to make the object look like it's the same size, but then end up a different size when you release it, the game is constantly measuring the distance between the object and whatever's behind it. So like in the commentary of the game, Albert mentions that if you pulled back twice as far, the object would get twice as big. And what you're seeing here on your screen right now is what that looks like from another angle, where the illusion that the object is remaining the same size in front of you is in fact constantly resizing for the player. Anyways, more developer tricks and out of bounds content is going to be shown today on an ongoing series where we basically take the camera anywhere we want to try to find secrets and new discoveries to some of our favorite games. And today we're going to be taking a look at Superliminal. This is a highly requested episode of Boundary Break. Never had the right camera for it, but this time we do. It's partially thanks to Jade. Jade didn't actually make the camera for this specific game, but a camera they made for one of the last Unity games we covered on the show actually kind of works with Superliminal. So now we're covering Superliminal. And also to make the episode a little bit extra special, we brought on Pillow Castle to answer some of the more technical questions. So thank you for that. And yeah, let's show you what we found. So I gotta admit, Superliminal was a really tough episode to cover, guys, because I many times thought, oh, I found something out of bounds. This is great and this is awesome. Like, for example, on the title screen, you can find this pawn that says Tester of the Year 1991 with the loading bar just sitting in a room. But the player is meant to find this. You just have to unlock the ability to walk around in the title screen. That's not the only time I almost embarrassed myself. Like, for example, I thought for sure that this top was going to be something that was unused, but no, you can also get that and you can also play with it. Yeah, and of course, the first time I found an Easter egg, a literal Easter egg in the game, I thought, oh yeah, here we go. This is prime content. But no, there's several Easter eggs that the player is supposed to find. But I think I found one thing that is actually legitimately unused. When you're inside of this box towards the end of the game, you end up continuing the game by going through this keyhole, but underneath the box, with no way of seeing underneath the box, is a giant gold key. This is something I believe is legitimately unused. So there you go. Had to do a little bit of homework to make sure I didn't make a fool of myself, but this is some unused content right here. And then there's this scene with the parking lot, and I think it's pretty obvious what's going on here, but still, I'll show you what's happening. Obviously, at a certain point, you hit a wall with this parking lot, and once you activate all four walls, you'll turn around and you'll see a building. Taking the camera out and showing you what's happening here can show you the exact moment that the walls are spawned in, but not only that, you might be a little bit surprised by this one. When you turn around and see the building, you're actually transported to an all-new area that rests above the parking lot. And now we're going to move it back to another developer technique. One of the most popular ones is finding like an image, almost like a paint of an object, and then when you line it up correctly, it makes the object come into the game world. I thought that was super cool. So as you can see with the footage itself, what is happening here is that the developers take an image of something and then project or stretch it across the camera Z-plane. And when you're in the exact correct position, which the game does sort of guide you into once you get to the sweet spot, what happens is that image, that projection, gets erased from the game, and in its place is the actual 3D object summoned into the game and makes the player none the wiser. And with that in mind, we have some of these puzzles here where you can actually remove an object and create a door frame in some cases, or a hole or whatever. And what does that look like on the other side before you activate the puzzle? It's really cool, actually. So taking the camera around here will show you that they put objects in place where the door should be. So the door frame is technically always there, but in order to give the illusion that you're turning the door paint into a door frame, basically the object gets in the way of removing the object that makes the illusion, essentially. So what you're looking at here is a giant object that the developers put in place to set up that illusion for the player. Also, I just thought it would be a great place to mention this too. When you get into this elevator during this chapter, you might remember there's one time where a brick wall gets in the way of the door frame when you go to open the elevator door. Well, it turns out the elevator never moved. Instead, a giant brick wall was actually placed in front of the place you just came from, which, by the way, if you don't recognize this place, this is the part where you can grab the staircase and you try to place it to reach another door frame, but you fall through the floor instead. This is the elevator that's just after that. And yeah, you can see that this is the room that you just came from to get inside the elevator. And I don't think I need to say this, but I think the brick wall is way bigger than any of us ever imagined it would be. And before we move on, I just want to show you this really cool part of the game where you jump through this door frame and you're falling into the time of your clock. In order to pull off this effect, it is really cool looking from out of bounds. You get a giant red box and a giant black box in order to make this work. So I don't know if I told you guys this, but this was my first time playing Superliminal for this episode. So there's some things that I did not expect to happen. But while I was just exploring around, just, you know, trying to find whatever I can find for the episode, I happened to see the spawn in for the pawn piece. It's clipped into the wall a little bit, but I didn't know what it was there for. I thought, oh, okay, I'm gonna just see that at some point, I'm sure. It's kind of weird that it's clipped into the wall. And it wasn't until, obviously, I get to the part where I see it peeking out at me, and so I go, oh, this is special. Okay, so then I take the camera over and I see the full piece looking over at what is supposed to be my position. And because I knew it was coming now, I was able to capture on footage the pawn piece moving away from the player's view, and you can see the exact moment that it unloads from the environment. Also, you might remember this optical illusion where as you go further into the hallway, you can see that it gets smaller and smaller to the point where it's a door frame you can't fit through. Well, I took the camera inside and looked over to the left just to see what was over there, and it doesn't even have a wall on the opposite side of the hallway here. The developers knew that you wouldn't be able to see it, so they didn't even bother. But you can see where the hallway ends, and it does kind of extend out quite a way, so they overcompensated a little bit just to make sure that the player couldn't see into the void. And at the risk of sounding a little bit repetitive, here's another hallway that you're not supposed to get to the end of. Normally, when you walk through this hallway, you get warped somewhere else well before you ever get to the end. But if I was to take the camera all the way to the end of this hallway, you can see another false outdoors, though this one's not even fully modeled, but still, you can see that it is just supposed to be a painted tapestry of the outside world. Also, I found a random developer cuboid out into the void here. This one features a generic Unity texture, and it says prototype as well as 1 meter to establish the size of it. Happening here is that there's a camera that's positioned in a room somewhere on this map, and wherever your player position is determines the angle and the distance of the camera that is pointing into that other room. The second that you trip over that flag, though, your character is actually teleported to that exact position, making a seamless transition from the portal camera over onto your camera, the player camera. And that's why when you move the camera like this, you don't see anything at all. It's just like a black door frame. That's because that room doesn't actually exist. It's just a camera giving you the illusion that it exists. And then there's this area where you're just constantly going through elevator doors, and I'm sure a lot of players would like to know how this works. So if you pan the camera out, you can see that there's in fact 16 different elevator rooms. And if you touch one of the edges of this giant room, the developers use the portal technique that was just explained to bring you back inside of this giant square. It's not until you follow the arrows and do exactly as it says before the game finally gives you a warp that'll take you out of this giant square of elevators. And then I found some unused area. This is a part of the game where there's supposed to be an optical illusion where it's protruding outward to show you a sense of depth inward. It's kind of cool once you get up close and realize, oh, I've been goofed. But on the other side of this optical illusion is a legitimate version of that hallway that it was tricking you into thinking existed. It does exist. And when you get to the end of that hallway, there is a false outdoors, just like what we saw earlier, but fully modeled as well. This is something I believe is never used in the game. So I asked the developers, like, how did this end up here? Why wasn't it used? Like, get an explanation from them and see what's up. And what they told me through email was that they believe it was actually a leftover from a demo build of the game. And then this is one of the last areas of the game, and then you might be surprised to find out that a lot of similar looking areas to this chapter actually all exist on the same plane. I'm going to pan the camera out and show you where everything is in relation to one another. And while I'm doing this, I'm just going to take the time to thank the developers. Thank you to Jade for making the original camera that actually worked in this game. And I want to thank all of you for watching this video. If you want to support Boundary Break the show, I will have a Patreon link, or if you want to support me in the best way possible, a subscription, and also checking out an older video helps out a ton. I would recommend that you check out Portal, of course, if you love Superliminal. I have an episode on both the first game and the second game. I also have a video for the Stanley Parable where both the creator of the game as well as the narrator guested on that show. I'm just gonna have a playlist to all those episodes in one playlist link that will also be in the video description as well at the end of this video. Thank you so much and take care.